All right, Kieran, how are you doing today, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Jacob.
Yeah, so we have Kieran O'Brien here, co-founder, co-CEO, Media Kits, which was just previously acquired. This is the Real Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Jacob O'Connor. And Kieran, I don't know if you know this or if you remember this. We did a podcast episode about 2 or 3 years ago for my podcast, Venture Mentality. And
Oh yeah.
you were one of the episodes I forgot to click record. And so we never actually got to air that.
Yeah, I remember. Didn't you contact me and say that you didn't record it, and then
Yeah, I think I
we were
sent you
trying
an
to
email or
reschedule?
something, and then things
Yeah,
fell through again.
yeah. Damn, that's crazy. That would have been really interesting to see the difference between the two.
I know. So I've got the memory of it myself. So my listeners still have no clue who you are. So I think it'd be a good place to start if you could give like a little bit of background over what you've been up to and kind of your exciting journey.
Yeah, man. I guess the quick and dirty is I'm 23 years old. I'm a serial entrepreneur. Started my first company when I was 16. And I've kind of started like 4 or 5 businesses now. Started out in the marketing space, building marketing agencies, scaled 2 marketing agencies to 7 figures in revenue. And then I started my first software company, which was MediaKits.com, which was just recently acquired. And now I'm kind of a digital nomad, I guess. It's not the most flattering term because it's kind of a buzzword, but that is probably the most accurate description of my life at the moment. Don't have a house or an apartment anywhere, just kind of floating around and experiencing life and working on the next play. So
That's one of the most exciting things to do, though. Like you're in that transition period where it's just purely you're getting that experience of living in all these other places and just trying to figure out what is next, what is right for you.
right. Yeah, it was crazy. It was like basically overnight from, running a big company with lots of employees and investors and customers and having all the weight of that on your shoulders to the next day, somebody else owning all of those things. And so, it's definitely been interesting kind of transitioning and really like having no day-to-day responsibilities. Like I went to Europe for a month and I literally had like little to no meetings. And so it's been a time for me to just kind of like think, reflect, plan the next move, and really just take advantage of kind of my independence and my lack of pressure, which is in as an entrepreneur sometimes nice to have a little bit of the pressure taken off for a short period of time. But I definitely miss it, and I'm ready to jump back into the ring. So
Yeah, 100%. I'd love for you to talk to a little bit about Media Kits. You guys did a good job of building up a lot of hype around it. You had on friends of the podcast as some of your investors, Dan Fleischman, David Meltzer, a couple others. I'd love for you to talk about the product that you guys built, as well as, I mean, that first product launch with Wiz Khalifa and all of the influencers you guys had gotten to use your product and all of that great stuff.
yeah, man. I mean, Casey and I, we know how to build hype, and Casey, it's interesting. Casey and I were never officially business partners prior to Media Kits,
Mhm.
but we did throw parties together. We threw parties and networking events,
Yeah.
and we always knew how to build up hype and how to market things properly. And so when we decided to go into business together and build Media Kits, it was kind of obvious to us that in order to build something meaningful, especially in the industry that we did, in like kind of the creator economy, it was very important to build up the hype and to get people interested at mass scale because it was a consumer product. And so we kind of thought, what's the best way to make a splash and really put our name out there from the very beginning. And so that's why we chose to do a big party with celebrity guests and all sorts of stuff like that. So it was all premeditated. There was no accidents in, the way that Media Kits kind of went viral and took over the internet for a little while. So
Well, and when you're building a product around influencers, virality is a very important factor for you guys to have in your own PR and marketing.
right, exactly.
So one of the cool things is the last couple of years I've had the opportunity as I'm in college to be a part of a venture capital network. And so I've done a lot on the VC side as well as like the angel side of just the world of private finance. I'd love for you to talk about the fundraising process and experience. I think you raised between 1 million and 1.5 million, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, right under 1.5 million.
Mhm. What was that like? Was it a rude awakening for you? Is that because I think you bootstrapped originally? I'd love to kind of
Yeah.
hear the founder's perspective.
Yeah. So the story of Media Kits actually is I came up with the idea for it back in 2017. So I was kind of marinating on the idea for over 3 years before we actually started. And then I bootstrapped it for a little while. I put like $100,000 of my own money into it when I was like 19 and 20, which was, back then, obviously a lot of money to
Right.
me. And so, it was definitely stressful because I was spending a lot of the money that I had to invest into this product. And so, and the most scary part was I didn't know if it was going to work or not. And so, yeah, I think the venture capital journey was kind of Casey coming to me one day and basically saying, hey, like, we should just go and get other people to give us money to build this thing. And it was kind of a foreign concept to me because I had bootstrapped my businesses, all of them up until that point, and I never needed outside funding. Like the two businesses I started prior were profitable on day one, literally. Like I literally had paying customers before I had an LLC with my two previous companies. And this time I had an LLC and I had spent $100,000 on essentially nothing and had zero customers. And so it was kind of like completely opposite to what I was used to. And so the idea of taking other people's money and having people invest tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars into something that I was like responsible for was kind of terrifying. And so the whole concept of raising money was very foreign and very scary to me. But once I kind of realized the process and how investors think and all the psychological things that kind of go on behind the scenes during a fundraise and how to do it properly, that's when I kind of understood the dynamic more and really leaned into it. And I learned a ton. I think the fundraising process for Media Kits was one of the most intense learning lessons and learning experiences of my entrepreneurial career so far.
You mentioned that you had waited a couple of years and invested your own money into this. Was it hard having the patience to wait to launch Media Kits, or when did you know it was go time?
No, it wasn't hard to wait. I just knew that it wasn't the right time. When I had the idea for it in 2017, there was a couple factors that caused me to not move on it. Actually, I shouldn't even say that. I did kind of move on it. I actually paid a developer to kind of like make like some really, really basic mock-ups. And I made like a landing page for like the website back then in 2017. And I just realized a couple things. Number one, software is really, really expensive. And I just simply do not have the money or the resources or the connections to fund a product like this. The second thing that I realized was that the industry just wasn't in a place where I believed that it was ready for this product. Influencer marketing, I don't know how involved you are or how much you've kept tabs on kind of like the influencer marketing trends over the years, but it became really, really popular in like 2014, 15, 16 with the rise of Instagram and Vine and all that. And then 2017, 2018, it kind of died out a little bit. And in my opinion, at a macro level, what kind of revived the creator economy was TikTok and the introduction and acceptance globally and culturally of short form content. And so that's what kind of brought back the creator economy. And so I knew it was go time when, 3 years later, after I had shelved the idea, TikTok blew up and Charlie D'Amelio and Addison Rae became like literally A-list celebrities overnight. And on top of that, we were in the middle of COVID and everybody is, early 2020 into late 2020, everyone's sitting at home on their phones, scrolling through TikTok, consuming short form content, and, the world shut down. And so there was kind of this perfect storm. And I was like, okay, if there was ever a time to start a company that empowered creators to kind of, display their analytics and get brand deals, I think now is the time because there's just this massive resurgence. And so that's kind of the story of the market timing that was going on in my head.
Yeah. So for context, I've been building a business in the name, image, and likeness industry. And so we kind of viewed a lot of the athletes as influencers. And so I've been running across a lot of those stats that you're just mentioning. That's kind of when I started taking a deeper look at Media Kits and realizing, wow, this is a true asset. We're trying to go out there and get brand deals for these athletes that are just quote influencers. What you guys have built have been perfect for us at the time too. So first of all, I mean, kudos to you guys for building such a great product and executing at the right time in the market.
Yeah, thank you.
So when you guys started, were you planning to get acquired? Was that the end goal, or did you want to build this thing to a large company and IPO?
Yeah, so I've been asked that question a few times, and especially because of how quick it was. My answer is no, we were not building to sell. And I think founders should never build to sell. However, I think it's ignorant and naive to ignore an eventuality. Like, I think if we're looking at it objectively as the founders of the company, it was an eventuality that the company would be acquired. Like we were building the industry's first media kit tool. We were the ones that were doing it best. It looked the best. It was being adopted widely by creators. We knew that it was going to work and we knew that it was going to get M&A interest. And so we weren't naive to that fact. We were not building the company to sell it, but we did know that it was probably going to sell. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of our mindset. And going into it, I don't believe that founders should ever build a company just to sell it, because I think then that kind of puts you in the wrong mindset, and you kind of have the wrong mission and the wrong drive going into something if you're just there to get it to have a payday. I think you should build to genuinely solve problems in the marketplace and provide value to your customers. But also don't be naive to the fact that if you're building a really cool tool that nobody else has, you're probably going to get M&A interest from it.
Mm-hmm. I think a big part of entrepreneurship is like there's a lot of ups and downs, uncertainty. How did you feel when you got that offer from Viral Nation? I mean, was there a sense of validity, a validation for what you were building? I personally, I feel like I would have been just overwhelmed with joy.
Yeah, it was definitely validating. I mean, we had M&A offers prior to that too. And for us, it was just kind of like the right timing and the right buyer. And so, it really wasn't a difficult decision, and especially like we're in kind of really uncertain times right now as a society. And so it was just kind of like it was just another like perfect storm kind of serendipitous moment where it was just all the right things kind of fell into place. So
That's super cool. And we were talking beforehand about this. You got acquired, was that 2 months ago, a month ago, or officially once it
yeah,
was released?
officially it was actually in July,
Okay.
but we didn't announce it until like mid-September. Yeah.
Just finalizing paperwork and whatnot.
Yeah. There's a lot of paperwork. We were actually in due diligence for almost 3 months prior to that. So we
Oh
started
my
talking.
gosh.
Yeah, we started talking to Viral Nation in like May, and the acquisition didn't go through until July. So
That's nerve wracking.
yeah.
That's exciting. So, but we were talking beforehand, you took a Europe trip that looked pretty exciting. And then you were just kind of listing off all the places you're about to travel. You mentioned right now, you don't have like a home base. I mean, how are you feeling
Yeah.
about this period of your life right now?
Man, if there's one word, it's transition. I'm in a very, very transitionary period in my life right now. And obviously selling my company and working on new projects is a massive part of that, because as an entrepreneur, your work is a huge portion of your identity. And so for me, like it's a very transitionary time. Within the span of 6 months, I got rid of my apartment. I sold my company. I got rid of my cars. I sold all my cars. I sold all my watches and jewelry. Like I literally just liquidated everything, got rid of everything, put my entire life in a storage unit. And I'm just like kind of fully nomadic right now. So it's not sustainable. It's definitely not something that I'm going to do for like months and months or definitely not years. I'm kind of on like month 6 of living like this. But yeah, I think I'm going to do it kind of through the rest of the year and then find roots somewhere. But for me, it's kind of the perfect setup for this kind of season of life that I'm in.
Right. It's that transitioning period is a good time to try and build that new identity that you were talking about. And as you kind of look at that and you're pondering that, where are you thinking or you want to head? I think I saw something about you wanted to do an Ironman. I mean, you're traveling a lot. What does
Yeah.
life hold for you right now?
Yeah, for me, I've always loved challenges. If I'm not being challenged, if I'm not facing adversity, I'm not happy. And I've realized about that about myself recently is kind of a recent realization. One of my favorite quotes by the late Trevor Moawad, who was I had the privilege to meet
Great guy.
in person. One of his most famous quotes is "Pressure is a privilege," and I really try to live by that. I find that if I'm not putting pressure on myself to perform, if I'm not trying to achieve audacious things, then I don't really feel fulfilled. And so that's kind of why I want to do an Ironman. I want to get I want to do more cardiovascular endurance type of challenges. I want to run a marathon soon as well. And so that's kind of like on the fitness is another huge passion of mine. So that's very important to me.
We talk about the marathon Ironman. Do you have any dates on those, or are those just something you're kind of slowly working towards?
Yeah, I'm not officially signed up for one yet, but I have a couple dates that I'm eyeing in like March, April of 2023. So I'm just kind of doing some very basic training at the moment, but I plan to kind of ratchet that up in early next year and really get into proper shape. So
That's super exciting. I've got an ultra marathon coming up here in 2 weeks that I've been training for the last 4 weeks.
Wow.
An Ironman is something that I've wanted to do for a while too. So that's on my bucket list in 2023 as well.
Yeah, man. Maybe we could do one together. I mean, like I grew up a swimmer.
Mhm.
And so, a lot of people that I talk to about the Ironman, they're like, oh, the swimming is the hardest part. And so for me, I'm like kind of thankful that my parents pushed me to be a
Right.
swimmer like my whole childhood. So I'm really just worried about just general cardio shape and getting my running form down. I'm pretty confident on bike and swim, but yeah, running is definitely my weakest part of the triathlon. So
Yeah. I would say running is where my most confidence is. I'm a terrible swimmer. That's the one I got to pick up.
oh man, maybe we should train together then and push each other on the weakness.
Yeah, that'd be super cool. You kind of talk about fitness being a big thing for you. As the CPG, like nutritional supplement, energy space, that been anything of interest of you, or where do your passion lie when it comes to entrepreneurship?
Uh, CPG and direct to consumer is not something that I'm involved in or particularly interested in at the moment. I'm kind of all in on software.
Yep.
However, a number of my friends are massive kind of like fitness CPG direct to consumer people, and I get to kind of see the inner workings of some of their businesses, which is awesome. And it's fascinating to me, absolutely. So it's something that I might be more involved in the coming years. We'll see. I have some things, definitely some interesting things behind the scenes, but as far as like my core focus and competency, it's still in software at the moment.
Man, that is super cool. And you're a non-technical founder, right? Like you don't have much software background experience, correct?
Right, correct.
So how do you kind of supplement that with, your interest is in software? So where would you say your strength lies in terms of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I mean, my strength is sales and product. So, really just understanding what kind of products need to be brought to market, understanding, how to break down consumer psychology in a software product and understand what people want, what people need. And then obviously getting people to buy it, sales and obviously sales is a massive part of fundraising as well. So I
Right.
like to think I'm decent at that after doing it. Now, for Media Kits, I'm pretty confident that for my next venture that I'll be able to fundraise effectively. And so I think those are kind of my core competencies.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I'm curious to get your opinion on, since I know you've done a lot in the digital agency media space. What is your opinion on Meta Facebook? Their stock has been down a lot lately, and I'm not, a huge stock trader by any means, but I've been curious because that's been such a big part of so many lives generationally. Facebook, and then our generation is more Instagram, and to see their stock falling so much, I'm kind of curious what someone in the industry thinks of that.
I have a lot of thoughts. I think just to keep it quick, Mark Zuckerberg obviously has a vision for something that a lot of people don't see,
Mhm.
namely his investors, because the stock is taking a shit. But I think that he's onto something. I think that we won't see the fruits of his labor or the results of what Meta's been working on behind the scenes for many, many months, if not years. But I do think that the investments they're making in metaverse technology right now are hopefully eventually going to pay off. I'd say that there's a high likelihood that they will. But again, it's going to take a while. It's going to cost a lot of money. The question that I always ask is, what else would they be doing? They've kind of perfected social media. They've kind of, there's a point of diminishing returns, I feel like, in terms of consumer social products. And I feel like if anybody's hit that kind of glass ceiling, it's them. And so I don't fault or question Mark Zuckerberg for the pivot that he's made with Meta. And I think it will play out the way that he thinks it will.
No doubt he is much more intelligent and aware of what is happening in that space than I am. A lot of my listeners are not of a tech background. How would you explain the metaverse and what Facebook is trying to do to someone that doesn't have a tech background?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm the one to explain like what the metaverse is, but I think that if we just look at it from a 10,000 foot view and kind of how the internet started and how that kind of all came to be, I think it's kind of a natural next step. And I think that, as humans, we value change and evolution. And I think that some version of this metaverse concept that everyone's talking about is going to be real, and it's going to be implemented in our day-to-day lives in a very real way, a lot sooner than most people think. I don't know exactly what that looks like. I'm not an industry expert. I don't have any domain expertise on this, but my my opinion for what it's worth is that.
Can you imagine that one day soon we could be in a meeting like this, doing a Zoom meeting, and like actually in the metaverse, I could physically be like over by you? How crazy that concept is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the use cases that's going to be used most frequently. Like in a business context, having meetings in person with people inside of the metaverse would be really cool.
It's crazy for sure. And one other company I wanted to get your opinion on, Snapchat. They've also been having a hard time lately. I know again,
Yeah.
these aren't like you're not inside knowledge, nothing like that, but I just wanted to get your opinion on what you think is going on there.
Yeah, Snapchat's an interesting company. They obviously pioneer a lot of things. Um, I think that they have kind of a fundamental corporate governance issue. I think that the way that their company is structured with how their voting shares work is kind of conducive to a lot of bureaucracy and it's kind of conducive to failure and creating a lethargic corporate environment. So I'm not the biggest fan of them as a company. Their products are cool, but I think that out of all the big, like the big five socials, I think TikTok is innovating and leading the way. I think Meta's close right behind them. And I think Snapchat's in dead last. And I would not be surprised if they failed within our lifetime or even within the next few years, or just got scooped up by one of the other guys. So I'm not the biggest fan. Not the biggest fan of Evan Spiegel, to be honest, either. And I think it's really interesting to see what'll happen now with Twitter. I think Twitter was in last place for a while, but now that Elon bought them officially and is making a lot of changes, it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. So yeah, it's an
I'm quite
interesting time to be
excited for
alive.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. One of the things that I've noticed you've done a good job of, and you are in this industry, is the influencer industry. You've built a good following on social media, and you've worked with a lot of people who have done the same thing. We're living in a strange time of like the quote creators building giant, massive companies. Mr. Beast, I saw just raised what was it, 150 million at a 1.5 billion-dollar valuation for
Yeah.
his entire brand. What advice or what thoughts do you have on the creator economy and them actually getting into like the venture capital model of raising money to fund their ventures?
I think it's smart. I don't consider myself to be an influencer by any means. And I don't plan on going back into the creator space, actually, to be completely honest with you.
Oh, wow.
I think that there's a lot of opportunity, but it's just really kind of not for me. My first love is B2B. That's kind of like my first three companies that I started were all B2B companies. So Media Kits was kind of an interesting tangent for me. But I learned a lot, and I do think that guys like Mr. Beast and some of these big creators are following the playbook for how to become the next kind of media powerhouses. I think media is becoming decentralized more and more every day. Influencers are increasingly having more reach than traditional media companies, and I think that that's absolutely a trend that's going to continue for the next few years. So
Yeah, I think someone made a good example of if you have two water bottles on a shelf, you got to buy one. All else the same, they cost the same. If one is branded by a creator that you know and trust, which one are you going to purchase? The standard traditional one or the one with the creator that you trust? And I think it's a pretty obvious choice.
yeah, absolutely, and that's definitely the world that we're living in now. So
It's crazy. Kieran, you got started in high school with entrepreneurship. I'm kind of curious, what got you onto that trajectory and path?
yeah, so the my kind of origin story is interesting. So I can really boil it down to like one specific event. So I was 16 years old. I was on my way to hockey practice. I grew up playing hockey my whole life, and I didn't have my driver's license yet, so I was sitting in the passenger seat. My dad was driving. We drive past this gas station, and there's a Ferrari, a gray Ferrari with a red convertible top. And I pointed out to my dad because I'm from a small town, like suburban town in Virginia. So, everyone just drove like normal commuter vehicles. You didn't see Ferraris in the town that I grew up in. So I pointed it out, and my dad's like, "Oh, that's Matt." I'm like, "Who's Matt? I need to meet this guy." So I was like, I want a Ferrari. I need to meet him and find out how to get a Ferrari. That's how my brain worked.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up cold emailing him. My dad knew who he was because he was like a big like philanthropic guy in our community. And so I found him online, found his email address, cold emailed him. He kind of took me under his wing, and he actually owned a chain of auto repair shops. And so not only did he get me into entrepreneurship, but he also got me into the automotive industry, which is where I ended up starting my first business. And so it's kind of, it was kind of full circle because, he ended up becoming like a very close mentor, and he kind of taught me the ropes of how to build a business and how to do customer service properly and so on and so forth. And there's a lot of big learnings from him, but I literally didn't even know what the word entrepreneur was until I met him. And that was kind of, a big breakthrough in my life.
That's incredible. And the role that a mentor plays, like especially so young in that journey, is invaluable. I know that entrepreneurs become kind of like a buzzword, but for the people that really do want to pursue something, they need those key figures along the way to really guide them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have, I'm sure you do, maybe who are some of the people in your life that you look to right now as a mentor to help you along as you continue this transitionary period?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a few amazing mentors. I'm very lucky. I have mentors in kind of like different areas of my life also, which is great because, you know, it's always awesome if you can look at people that are where you want to be in at least one category of life, and kind of mimic their habits and their processes. But nobody has it all perfect, right? So there's always, with every mentor, there's always something that they're struggling with, and so you can kind of, when you have mentors that are kind of successful in different aspects of their lives and careers, you can kind of cherry pick the things that you want to learn from them. And so Matt was my first one. He kind of taught me about entrepreneurship kind of at a high level, and he also taught me about the automotive industry, which was very topical for me because I started a business in that industry. My closest mentor currently, Matt, is still a very close mentor of mine. I still talk to him frequently, but my closest mentor currently is probably Kevin Gordon, who's kind of like an older brother figure to me. I met him not too long after I met Matt in 2018, and he built and sold a marketing technology company in the automotive industry as well. And we're very similar, like personality wise. So he's in his mid to late 30s and a very successful entrepreneur, and he's another one of my closest mentors. And then I've got a few others. Joe Soto, very good mentor of mine, kind of also took me under his wing early. Aristotle Loomis, he was on our board of directors for Media Kits and helped us with the fundraising. And he's a kind of a genius when it comes to fundraising and raising capital and business strategy. So he's another one as well.
That's awesome. Kieran, as we start to wrap up here, I've got just two more questions for you. The first one is, where can people find you online if they want to connect and learn more about what you're doing, keep up with your travels, Ironman, whatever it is?
Yeah, man. Well, if you want to keep up with my travels, my Instagram is probably best. It's just at Kieran O'Brien. I'm posting more on Twitter too. It's at the Kieran O'Brien. So I'm putting up tweet threads on there as well, kind of talking about what I'm working on. And then, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of on everything. I'm on TikTok. I'm on everything, but Instagram is probably where I spend the most time. So
very cool. All right, Kieran. Well, looking back at your journey, what advice would you offer to your younger self?
Let's see. The advice that I would offer to my younger self would be to take more bigger risks earlier. I think that once you get your hands on a little bit of success, a little bit of money, you start to have a little bit of scarcity around it. You're like, oh, I got to protect this and grow it. And, really, if you're under the age of like 30 and, you have an opportunity in front of you, don't squander that by thinking small. Go as big as you can, especially, when you don't have a wife, you don't have kids. Like in my case, I don't even have a car or an apartment to pay. Like I have nothing. Right. So for me, it's like taking the biggest, most massive risks humanly possible is kind of the name of the game for me. And I wish that my younger self, I definitely took big risks when I was younger. But looking back, I think I definitely could have gone even crazier. And I think it would have worked out favorably. Just looking back based on, what I ended up accomplishing by not going as hard as I think I could have. So
I love that. You should never play small. That's something I live by.
Right.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on, Kieran.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jacob.